Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot, and welcome to the channel. We do have Amy Lundy. Thank you very much, Amy, for joining us. For those of you not familiar with Amy, she's a really respected tennis journalist. Work has featured on multiple platforms: Tennis Congress, ESPN, Tennis Connected. Also part of the 3 Tennis podcasts as well on YouTube. So do check it out. Amy, how are you doing?
Great. I don't know about really respected.
Only a little bit. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Partially.
Some of my tweets kind of put me out of really respected. I'm quite opinionated.
Well, that's good. That's what we like. Obviously, you don't want to be too generic. That's fantastic. That's what we like. Well, to be fair, you say not really respected, but a lot of tennis platforms that I've seen quote some of your tweet, a lot of your tweets actually. So
Oh,
information and
good.
opinions. So yeah,
Thanks.
so you can take solace from that. Um, First of all, how are you doing? Are you good?
Yeah, I'm great. Just coming down from the Australian Open. Those of us who were not there this year are in different time zones around the globe and are sleep challenged. And I was telling you a little bit ago that I like to really dive into the tournament and go all in on it. And then I'm still in that zone the day after. And then I start to come down and I take a little break. And then toward the end of the week, I start diving into the numbers and looking at trends and saying, okay, let's see what really happened. Let's see what conventional wisdom is. And then let's see if we can kind of bust some myths or, see what the trends may be going forward.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. To start us off, actually, then, given that we were talking about it just finishing in the finals, so I know you also wrote an article on the final, Nadal versus, of course, Medvedev, and that really historic victory in the end. Everyone on the channel knows I'm a little bit of a Rafa fan. I'm happy to say that, and also I'm okay to put my hand up and say I am. So obviously, I was very happy with that as well. But a very surprising victory, to say the least. And do check out Amy's article as well. I think it's linked on her. I think it's linked on your Twitter, isn't it? In the
Yes.
bio as well.
Yes, it
So
is.
it was a really interesting read, and yeah, I recommend it. But a couple of things that you mentioned there were really interesting, and I thought the biggest thing that stood out to me was about the conservation of energy, something that we don't really associate with Nadal, and something which in the past, I guess he's more looked to play every point at 100%, and that's really been his MO, but something that's definitely adapted. Obviously, a few adjustments as well in the way that he plays, standing up a bit more in return for second serve return position. So, as a fan, I was screaming throughout a lot of the matches, telling him, one set, for example, the set he lost against Hachinov, he started standing further back on the second serve return. I said, "Why are you doing that? It's not working. Like he was working standing forward." And he won the first 2 sets doing it. But generally, of course, ended up losing in a lot of areas in the final to Medvedev, but one where it mattered most, which was, of course, the match at the end of the title. What are your thoughts on the final as a whole, and also the points that you kind of made as well? I'm sure you can articulate it a lot better than I have.
Well, I did not think that Medvedev should have been the favorite going into the match, simply because he's Nadal, and I never bet against him. And he has been there before. He's been to so many, if he hasn't won the Grand Slam, he's been to a lot of finals, semifinals. Think of all the huge best of 5 matches that he's played. And Medvedev, he hasn't even won that many best of 5 matches, or 5-set matches, I should say, in his career. So he was a guy who, just a year ago, people were saying, could he win a 5-set match? Did he have the stamina to do that? And there was a lot of talk about the younger guy, Medvedev, who is 10 years younger than Nadal, would have more legs and more stamina. And I really, having been 25 myself and been 35 myself, I know that there's really not that much of a difference. I mean, I think Nadal is still in his prime, and maybe on the downside of the mountain, but not so much. And I thought that Rafa would, based on what I had seen in the tournament so far, that he would have the legs and the lungs, and he did. That is true. He did, and I really thought that the entire match kind of broke out into 3 matches, and this is what I mentioned in my article. The first match was won by Medvedev, but barely in straight sets. The second match, which consisted of the third and fourth sets, was won by Nadal fairly convincingly. And then you had match number 3 for the whole deal. And Nadal won that. And the way that he won it was pretty interesting. He did something, as you mentioned, that we have never really seen him do in his career, and that is conserve his energy on certain points.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, some of the points, and I think you mentioned it in your article, and I remember watching and thinking, oh, this is new. So not, for example, on one of the games where he was 30 love down, or as well, 40 love down on Medvedev's serve, and Medvedev it was a short return from Nadal, and he just stopped playing, really. Just stopped playing. Medvedev put the ball away into the open court, and he just thought, okay, he's happy to just give that point away because he's thinking, I need to concentrate on my service game, and this game's gone. It's not to say, obviously, that if it was 40 love and then it was a good return, that he wouldn't play the point. Of course he was, but I think it was about judging when not to use his energy and when to. I think obviously he's going to be the master at that given his experience, and of course some of the drop shots at times as well. In that fifth set, he just thought, look, I'm not going to get there. If I am, I'm not going to be able to manipulate the ball in the way that I want to end up then winning the point. So that was really interesting to see, because we're just used to him going full throttle, throwing his body around left, right, and center, and that's obviously why he's had all those those types of injuries, those grinding injuries, tendonitis in both knees, for example, because he really throws his body around. But maybe playing in a smarter way. And is that something that you think we can see him utilizing more, say, for example, for the rest of the year as well, and coming obviously into the clay court swing, which is where, of course, he will, you'd imagine, have a lot of success in, whether it is Roland Garros or just some of the tournaments there anyways. But just for him as a person, I'm assuming that this is a new thing that we've seen, for one. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also, do you think it will be something that long term he's thinking, I need to start doing this? Because, as you said, he is still relatively, very, well, he's extremely fit compared to the average person, but he is slightly coming onto the downside of that, and needs to maybe, assess how he plays and adjust slightly.
Yes, I think it's something, I think it is fairly new, although I don't really have any evidence to back that up. It's just sort of eyeballing it. I would have to dig deeper into that. But I do think that it's probably a good tactic going forward. The only question is he doing it just off of his own intuition, or is he doing it based on data? Because Carlos Moya, his coach, is a big fan of data. And the really interesting thing is, statistically, if someone is serving, like let's say Medvedev serving, and he wins the first point of the game, then he has an extremely high chance. I mean, we're talking 80s, 90s% chance of winning the game, just off winning the first point. And I actually did a story on Federer a couple of years ago, where Federer is even more that way. And he was in a zone. This was maybe 2018 to start the season, where if Federer won the first point off of his service game, he was going on to win the game like 97% of the time. So if Federer won that first point, game over, pretty much. And he had a streak going. It was amazing. And it went from like January all the way through Wimbledon. But so does Nadal know that? And does he know, if he's returning against a great server like Medvedev, that if Medvedev wins the first point, maybe I go into conservation mode here? I don't know that yet. And then the other sort of statistical thing is that when you're watching a match, there are really 2 matches going on. One is the points played on first serve, anyone's first serve. And the other match is the points played on second serve. So the battle and the war is really, in men's tennis especially, is really contested on those second serve
Yeah.
points. So there was a game that Medvedev held at love in the 5th set, and Rafa just wasn't trying. He let him have it. So, good energy conservation, and it probably paid off.
Yeah. It's funny because when I guess, I know that you play tennis as well, and I probably not to as high level, but as a club player, you just think, I've got to throw everything at it, right? Because if I throw away a game, then my opponent's thinking, well, I've had an easy service game, and I've got the momentum, I've got huge momentum going to the return game, and then you feel like, I've kind of given a bit of a shift there. But these guys are so experienced, like Nadal, they know that, look, they've got the confidence there. Whereas I feel like with us, maybe I'm just a bit mentally weak that I feel like I need to do that. But I'm throwing myself around everywhere, which is quite funny. But yeah.
Well, first of all, I am a club player, pretty low level, but I do love it. I play a lot. I do. I think it's a slippery slope for 99.99% of the tennis players on the planet. If you stop trying and you stop engaging your feet and doing your mental processes and all that, then it's really dangerous. You're getting into a bad zone there. And Andre Agassi famously said that he would tank sets, if it looked like he was going to lose a set or something like that. Well, I mean, look, he can afford to do that. He knew what he was doing. Almost anyone else, I think it's probably a bad move. And I have a little funny story. I hardly ever talk about my own tennis game, but where I play in the Northeast United States, we play indoor tennis, and they book the courts by the hours. So our matches are actually timed, and we can't go over 2 hours. So sometimes we play 2 sets, and then if we split sets, we get to a tiebreaker. Well, sometimes you get into this situation where you're up against the clock, and if you've won the first set, but you're losing very bad in the second set, and you're up against the clock, you've got to hurry up and finish that second set so that you can get into the tiebreaker and have a chance to win the match. So I was in this match where we had to hurry up and lose the set, and it's bad, really bad. And I said to my partner, it was a doubles match, I said, we got to start crushing the ball into the net. Just hit the ball in the net and get it over with. And I couldn't hit the ball in the net. I was hitting winners. The ball was like zipping across, and we could not get out. We ended up losing the match. So moral of the story, don't ever start trying to lose. Nadal can do it, but nobody else can.
It sounds like the moral of the story is aim for the net and you hit winners.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Might try that. Maybe that's a secret that I'll be missing, to be fair. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, normally, I feel like it just disrupts rhythm so quickly, and that's it. Your feet are just completely disengaged. You're really flat-footed, and everything just goes off completely. I know it does with me if I've ever tried it in the past. But yeah, Nadal obviously just a completely different animal, of course. Were you surprised that obviously there was this stat going around that he hadn't won a 5-set match since 2007, which I was really surprised about. And I'm a big Rafa fan, but I was thinking that can't be right. That's 14 years ago. That's ridiculous. I was thinking, surely 2007. And I was thinking, well, he won more than 2008. Obviously, that really famous match. He's won so many Grand Slams since. And I was like, surely at some point he must have won. Even if he didn't go on to win that Grand Slam, surely he must have. And I just thought, no, it just hasn't happened. And it was really strange to kind of hear about. And of course, he was the first person to win from 2 sets to love down the Open era in the Australian Open final. So a couple of obviously really big records there, and one personal one as well. Were you surprised, one, that he came back, and also the way that he did? I feel like the trend throughout his whole run was, from the games that I watched anyway, was he came out really strong in the first 2 sets, looked really good. In the third set, there was a dip, and or kind of wouldn't say it was taking a set off, but I think it was just he couldn't quite keep up that intensity for a whole 3 sets, and the opponent then, that was their chance to kind of say, well, it's now or never. We need to go for it. Berrettini did the same thing. Khachanov, Shapovalov, of course, as well. So He had that dip in that third set, and then from there it was, well, see how he goes. Of course, the Shapovalov, he lost the fourth one as well, but Berrettini and Khachanov, he got it done in the fourth. Were you surprised it flipped the first two sets where like really his level was not great? Is actually the first set I was so worried. I was doing live commentary for it and I was like, this is the worst level I've seen him in all tournament. Hardly able to find a first serve, the forehand, like not much velocity, not really going through the core, like very loopy, and the backhand wasn't firing, and I was like, oh, this is worrying. No, he's coming to the net and the volleys weren't, he's making the volleys, but they weren't the pinpoint volleys we're used to. The drop volleys were not quite good enough, and Medvedev was getting to them. Were you surprised there was this kind of flip the way it was in the final, and then surprised that also he managed to win in the end from that position? Because the win predictor, I think I saw on your Twitter, said, and I saw it as well on the screen, I remember quoting it, saying it's 4% or 6%, I think it was. And I remember looking at that, and then it was funny because it got to the fifth set and he was a break-up, and I said, just remember, if he wins this, he won it from a 6% chance position. I was like,
yeah,
he really made it count.
The win predictor drives me crazy because I feel like it just takes the fun out of it, and also whoever's winning the match is very high in the win predictor. I mean, it's just sort of, it doesn't have a lot of use for me, but that's okay. To answer your question, I thought the second set was unique. That was a set where Rafa was up breaks, and then he was up mini breaks and the tiebreaker.
Yep.
So I just kept texting my friends, this match is not out of reach.
No.
He's sort of got this. And in the first set, I just thought that Medvedev came out firing on his first serve, and Rafa was just experimenting. He was experimenting with return position and trying to figure out, okay, let's see how I'm going to play this guy on this particular surface in these conditions today. So I didn't think much of it. The second set, I thought, okay, could have gone either way. And I still did not think he was dead yet. And then he won the third set, and I thought, okay, here we go. If we can just get to 2 sets all, then I think Rafa's got it, because at that point Medvedev was starting to get the trainer out on his legs. And Rafa wasn't. Rafa was doing his usual, stepping over the lines. Exactly.
His usual ritual where he does exactly the same thing. I feel like he's superstitious, doesn't he? He does a little shuffle, and he has to go behind the line and then go forward, doesn't he?
Yes.
It's so funny. I love seeing it. It's just so unique. Oh, crazy. But were you surprised that the fact that, did you know about that stat before, about the 2007 stat? And then were you surprised, for one, it had been that long, and then also the fact that he managed to then get it done? Or was it just like, as you were saying during the match, you're like, actually, I feel like that's the way the match is starting to go?
It's not that surprising. It's actually a compliment or a tribute to him, because think of all his French Opens where he has just ripped through and won in straight sets, or so it's actually his dominance. That's a deceptive little, but it's interesting. It's an interesting historical note.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's more, I was thinking, maybe he done it at Wimbledon, like, in the first couple of rounds where you're just feeling a little bit, he's not feeling that great, and he might have been maybe partly injured, but I think, obviously it's happened a couple of times, or when it has, he just ended up losing because he just hasn't, been playing particularly well, and he's then got upset. But that was surprising. Did you think the conditions had any effect? I felt like going into it, if he was under the roof, indoor, I felt like Medvedev had a slight advantage if that was to happen. But outdoor, obviously we know, and Nadal said it in interviews before the final as well, that he would prefer it to be outdoors. He prefers those conditions. He obviously played the semi against Berrettini and managed to adjust quite well. But obviously the final was outdoors. It was very warm. I know he had a bit of was it heat sickness or kind of heat stroke against Shapovalov, but it wasn't as hot. What did you think about that?
I thought that conditions were favorable to him, and things kind of broke his way. He got some extra time off toward the end of the tournament. I had heard, and I really haven't heard this from anyone else, but I had talked to a couple of coaches just before the start of the tournament, and I said, how are the courts playing? Because every single year before the Australian Open, you hear, "Oh my God, it's so fast. It's
Yeah.
like glass. It's like,
Yeah.
ice." And both these, or three of them, actually said, "You know what? It's a little bit slower this year. It's
Mm.
not quite to its normal fast level." Well, then I didn't hear that again. And those are the only people that I heard it from. And the narrative seemed to be that the courts were fast.
Yeah.
But probably they were just a touch slower. Rod Laver was just a touch slower this year. Advantage Rafa.
Yeah.
And other than that, I'm just impressed with the guy. I mean, this is not his best surface. And look at what he did. It's amazing.
Yeah, incredible. People are probably thinking of waxing lyrical about him, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely his worst surface for sure. Obviously, the fact that he's only won here once, or won Australia in the Australian Open once, I'm saying it like I'm in Australia, but the four finals lost as well, and obviously the near misses in 2012 and 2017, if I'm not mistaken, serving for the set or break up anyway in those final sets. So definitely some scarring tissue there, but made it count in what is a fantastic comeback, and some parallels there between, of course, Federer as well, and in 2017 when he was the same age and came off a layoff and some type of medical procedure, and a very similar time off, came back and obviously beat Nadal in the Australian Open in that final. So yeah, really impressive. And what did you think in terms of Medvedev? Could he have done anything differently? Could he have done anything differently? He was winning, total points, aces, winners, unforced errors, first serves in, first serve points won, 0-4 rallies, 5-8 rallies, return points. Was it just a case of it was very close, but Rafa played the major points better, those huge pressure points in that kind of fifth set?
I think really the difference is that you're talking about an all-court player, all-surface player, all-court player versus a baseliner. And Medvedev he didn't have all the shots. Like, he's not as comfortable at the net.
No.
He's not as comfortable, doing retrievals, or he's a little more lanky. Yes, he's fast to the ball, 2 steps and he's where he needs to be, but he's just a little less, fit, I guess. I've never really thought that like biceps or really big quadriceps were important in tennis, but watching this match, I kind of changed my mind, because Rafa was so balanced. If he had to get really low to snag a volley, or if he had to execute a backhand volley, just everything's really tight. And Medvedev's technique on some of his volleys are just a little more flailing, because he's lanky, and so he could work on his technique, and he could probably add a little bit of muscle. But it's just all three of the big three, really, Novak, Roger, and Rafa, they're all court players. Novak has done a lot to work on his volleys and his net play, and he's great. He's great. I'd put him up there I'd put him way ahead of the average player on the ATP Tour. So, for anyone who's trying to develop their game, no matter what their level is, I would say look at what Rafa does. Look at all the shots he has. That's a better way to go. Learn to come into the net, learn what to do with a high ball to your backhand and all that. The drop shots. And that's why I thought he was just better. I mean, he's just a better player. He's 10 years older, but he's a better player.
Yeah, no, that's really well put, I think. I feel like also the added muscle gives you a more sturdy base, I feel, which probably helps then at the net with the volleys. And also some of the reflex volleys he had to hit at times, and some of the reflex shots he had to hit, it probably helped him having that kind of more sturdier base. Whereas, as you said, with Medvedev, he's kind of a little bit flailing at the net. Almost feels like he looks really uncomfortable at the net. There are some points where he could have easily hit a shot, and it could have been an approach, could have come to the net, and he just went backwards, and it's really interesting to see because like I would say maybe 90% of players would actually go forward, even if they're not as potent at the net as someone like a Nadal or a Federer or Djokovic, for example. But with him, it was no, don't want to do that. Actually, I'm at home on the baseline, which is really intriguing. And
yes.
yeah, that's really interesting.
That's like becoming passe, and what's old is new again.
Mm.
Probably because of the endurance of the big three. We're seeing, wow, okay, so maybe Rafa hasn't come into the net, and I don't know, I haven't seen him do it much in 2 or 3 matches, but when he has to do it, the skills are there. It's kind of like Barty, and we're going to talk about her in a minute too. She's also an all-court player. It's just I'm a big fan of that style of play, and I think you're spot on about Medvedev's his technique and how uncomfortable he looks.
Yeah, no, agreed. And I think Nadal's backhand, I mean, we could talk about that for ages, but I mean, it's obviously so improved. And there was one game where he hit 3 backhand winners, and they're down the line. I think one was a pass, one was just a clean winner, and another again was like a clean winner. And he won 3 points, and he ended up being like 40 love up on the Medvedev serve with those backhands, and I was like, this couldn't get any better. I was like, this is amazing. And it's just, I feel like, obviously, for me, I feel like 90 to 95% of players, their weaker wing is their backhand. And when that backhand on the line is firing, it's when you normally know that a player is in really good nick, and that's when they're in good form. And as soon as I was like, okay, he's got this, he should be okay. Obviously then, had some shaky moments as well, but in the end got it done, which is really impressive.
And how much slice did Rafa use?
Yeah,
I mean,
he did.
throughout this tournament, but in this match in particular, who knew? Who knew he could hit that shot? But again, he has literally every shot. I was at a clinic. I don't know. This might have been a couple of years ago, and Mats Wilander was there. He was conducting the clinic, and he said he was talking about lobbing to somebody's backhand, because who hits a backhand overhead? Rafa hits a backhand overhead.
He does, yeah.
He literally has all the shots. But the slice and how he used it, a lot of the analysts were critical of it during the match because he wasn't getting enough depth on it.
Yeah.
But he used it in times of defense, and when he was a little bit inside the court, he needed to use it, and he used it really well down the stretch.
No, agreed. And it's thing is, the slice, I always feel like his slice has been okay, but yeah, mainly kind of like a defensive tool. But I think there was a stat they brought up, which was, I think in most of the matches he'd used it around 20%, and then in the match he'd used it around 40% in the final. So clearly a tactic employed. I think there is a thought, isn't there, that Medvedev doesn't like the ball, that slice that low, being as tall as he is and having to really get under the ball. Doesn't like to hit with big topspin, and he's had to kind of develop that more whipping forehand at times, which is now a variation to the kind of flatter forehand he likes hitting. I feel like that's why he used it. And even if they were shorter, which at times may have been punished, Medvedev coming forward, and I guess it's about you talked about the variation, his transition coming forward and hitting the approach shot and even the shorter forehand to put away. He makes a lot of errors on that, which you wouldn't expect someone of that level to make those errors on, which is quite a weird kind of error to see. But on the forehand, he does. And it might just be because he feels uncomfortable in that part of the court. Anywhere that's kind of service box forward, that's it. It's like that's a weird area for him to go into, for sure. Before we move on to the kind of Barty and her final, is there anything that you wanted to mention about this final before we move on?
I think that it will go down as one of the greatest matches ever played. Yeah. And perhaps like the Nadal-Federer famous final at Wimbledon that Nadal won, books were written about it, movies have been done about it, maybe something along those lines for this match. And if you think about all the greatest matches in tennis history, Nadal is in several of them.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? He really is. And I was actually talking to one of my friends, and I said, we were still in secondary school, and Nadal was kind of in his peak. That's when people were talking about, he was in his peak. Now I'm, 27, and he's still playing and winning a Grand Slam. It's incredible. Like, it just transcends time almost in terms of my life, which is incredible to kind of think about. But yeah, actually, before we move on, I wanted to ask you about Medvedev's comments after, which I thought were a little bit kind of disheartening and not. I think maybe a spur of the moment thing, because he was obviously really upset he lost, but said that I think. I can't say exactly that's the reason, but it seemed like he was disillusioned with the crowd and booing him a lot. And I can safely say that I'm happy for people to cheer on like Nadal if they're really pro Nadal. Booing is not really something that I'm a fan of. I think it's just silly. There's no need to boo someone, but he was really upset about it. Normally he kind of plays into it, and then maybe it's because he's won a slam now, so he feels like he has earned some of that respect, which I can probably understand. And
the other guy had 120.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
let's.
I don't know. Maybe it's the kind of lack of cheering, or maybe it was just the booing and kind of shouting between points. I don't know. But either way, he said that he kind of narrated a story about him being a child and having a dream, and said that that's kind of dead a little bit now, and he only wants to play. I guess he implied that he was playing for the adoration of fans on top of other factors, but now he's just going to play for himself and a family. And he's not going. He said he might miss Wimbledon and the US and like Roland Garros if there's a tournament in Moscow. I don't think he's going to do that, but basically trying to highlight that look, he's not particularly happy with how he's being treated, etc. What are your thoughts on it? First of all, do you feel for him a little bit? Do you think he overreacted? Are you a bit in between? Like, what's your thoughts?
Well, you asked earlier, what does Medvedev need to work on? And we talked about his game, but really he does need to work on his emotions. And I don't say that in like a judgmental way, because I'm extremely emotional and I'm constantly working on it, just not only on the tennis court, but in life. And I'm a sensitive soul, so I totally get that. But it is surprising to me that he's the number 2 player in the world and he's sensitive about the crowd. I mean, so many tennis players just don't take it personally. Like Danielle Collins went out and did not take it personally that the crowd really wanted Barty to win. And I think maybe Medvedev should start looking at players like that, and he's probably on the right track with it's really now just a business, but I actually don't think he meant that. I think it was just an emotional reaction to having been 2 sets up and been that close and let it slip away to one of the all-time greats. And I always think of like Novak a few years ago after a bad loss at Roland Garros, saying that somebody asked him about Wimbledon and he's like, I don't even think I'm going to play the grass season. I probably won't even play it. It was just in that moment. And then he ended up winning Wimbledon that year. So players say things, they're human beings, So I would say I would like to see Medvedev learn to control his emotions, particularly, I mean, who cares what they say afterwards, but during the match, I would like to see him not take the crowd so personal, especially when you're playing against someone the stature of like Nadal. But it's easier said than done. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, agree. It's weird though, because I feel like a year or so ago, he didn't mind it. He was always playing into it. He loved it, the villain, and he'd say thank you. And I don't know whether it was because he was saying it because he didn't like it, but it was kind of like, in reverse psychology. And then but I feel like there's been a flip, and maybe he feels like I need to be up. I don't know why there's been that turnaround, but it definitely does affect him, because in the final against, you could see like he was giving a thumbs up to the crowd and he wasn't happy, and he was telling the umpire, can he take this person out? Can he keep this person out? And he wasn't happy with the noise, and it definitely does affect his play, and he said that in the past. So I'm hoping it's something that he can resolve sooner rather than later. And someone did say on Twitter, which I thought was quite funny, that obviously he has antagonized the crowd in the past, then why be surprised that the crowd's not going to be behind him? So I kind of feel that a little bit as well.
I saw that comment, or there was a comment that's saying that he was a reflection of the crowd, and I thought, gosh, that is so spot on. He's like holding up a
Mm,
mirror, his behavior, and their. But at the same time, I think it's important as a journalist and a storyteller, it's important that we don't turn these players into robots.
yeah.
And Medvedev is a great character and he does have a personality. And I would love to see that continue. So it's like a balancing act and it's a fine line. And I would never personally want to get on him too much for the way he handled things.
Agreed. No, I mean he's great. I mean he's a great character and personality, and I mean the fact that he won the US Open and did a FIFA celebration is amazing in itself. To be honest with you, it's incredible. So no, he's a great personality, and I think definitely needed on tour. So
Yes.
hopefully he can resolve that. Yeah, on to the women's then. So Barty, I think we can safely say is well, she just keeps on, probably has cemented her place as definitely at the moment anyway, the best women's player in the world. Managing to come through in her home slam and not drop a single set, which is really, really impressive. I think she dropped the least number of games in a tournament after, I want to say, is Monica Seles and Steffi Graf, I think it was, on the way to a final. So that was really impressive. And then the first Australian to win the Australian Open since 1973, if my stats are correct. So really impressive from Ash Barty, and just continues to impress. I mean, obviously winning a Wimbledon and Roland Garros, hadn't won a hardcourt Grand Slam yet, which people were a bit surprised about. But got through here. There was that really exciting clash that we didn't get to see her against Naomi Osaka because Anisimova played so well against Osaka, obviously, the previous round. Everyone was like, that's the one we want to see in the fourth round. We didn't get to see that. She didn't actually play, I think she only played 2 top 20 players on the way to the final, but I think we can safely say that she deserved to win it, and you can only play who's in front of her. How impressed are you with her, and what did you think of her run at the Australian Open? I thought it was just really clinical.
It's hard to say whose championship is more impressive, hers or Nadal's, because she had to have so much pressure on
Yeah.
her. And the way, it wasn't just that she did it, that she pulled it out, it was the way she did it so decisively and just making it look kind of easy. I'm really a big fan of her style. She does remind me of Federer. She moves brilliantly, and she holds serve like Roger Federer. And the percentages at which she holds serve is unusual for the women's game.
Yeah.
It's not that the women, if you really dig down and look at the stats, it's not that the women hold serve so much less than the men do. You would think, that would be the case, but it's not. It's actually just a few percentage points less than men hold serve. But she's well above even the men, what the average is on the ATP tour. So in some ways, she has some of the statistical qualities of a male player, but she has a lot of panache, and she has a very easy time with power players. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, no, she definitely does. I was thinking that obviously played Anisimova and Madison Keys and just had so easy. I mean, she just went through it and was like, "Yeah, I can nullify you." The backhand slice is a defensive weapon. It's an attacking weapon. She can use it in so many different ways. It's of course, something that a lot of people talked about over the last couple of years. The forehand cross court's probably one of the best forehand cross courts in not just women's tennis, but I think tennis period. It's so good. And you mentioned about her service games. I think she just hits her spot so well, and she doesn't serve. Yes, she serves pretty quickly for. I think in the women's game, I think she was serving around the 180k mark, which is really impressive. But the way she hits her spots is really good, and the different variations she has, she seems to have all the different variations and has control in those aspects as well. And the 1+ shot behind the serve is normally a forehand, and it's normally really deadly. So she's able to hold very easily. And yeah, as you said, she just doesn't have issues with power play. She had like a couple of very brisk moments against Daniel Collins, which we'll discuss in a second, because she had an amazing run where, yeah, she struggled a little bit, but she kind of got through that, and then professionally got it done. And the other thing as well, which I've been really impressed with, is her ability. She didn't maybe utilize it as much as I've seen in the past, but her ability to come to the net and transition, I
Mm-hmm.
think, is something that's quite unique.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Madison Keys. So Barty utilized slicing the forehand short to Madison Keys, which is really weird because why would you do that? You're just giving a short ball to opponent. But Madison Keys would hit the approach and it wasn't quite good enough. And she'd come to the net and Barty would just pass her or lob her. And Madison Keys is also not very comfortable at the net. And it's something that not many women's players have in their locker, is that real all-round game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that she shows that, the fact that I think after Serena Williams, she's the only women's player to win all three services as well in the Grand Slam. Yeah, well, currently active players anyway. So that really impressed me as well. Just the completeness of her game.
Absolutely. On the forehand, which you mentioned, to me, there really is something of a Federer-like quality to it, because she gets that lag on it, just a little bit of the lag, and then the snap. So it's like, ooh. So I actually had a chance to ask her about her slice at Roland Garros the year she won, and she said that she uses it to, quote, pin her opponents in certain areas of the court. So she can use it defensively, but she can also use it sort of in the chess match and moving players around to set them up and set up her forehand. So yeah, and you're spot on. Her volley technique it should be in the textbook. It is picture perfect. And she really didn't have to use it that much in this tournament.
Yeah, she did. She didn't. I think just because the service games are so short, and then she ended up winning the points before that, and the opponent should force errors really quickly out of opponents. Yeah, I mean, she's so good. Very much looking forward to seeing her. I mean, she's going into two Grand Slams she's won before. I cannot see her not being the favourite in every single Grand Slam she plays in this year. So it's going to be interesting to see whether she's able to add to it. But I'd imagine surely she's going to add at least one more, I would imagine. But we'll see. We'll see how she goes. Danielle Collins was really impressive, though, from an American standpoint. Obviously, now she's ranked #1 American as well on the women's side, which is really impressive, and making her top 10 debut. She's got a very attacking game. I mean, very easy on the eye. I think if you're not a particularly hardcore fan anyway, for sure, I think she definitely captures the imagination of the casuals, the way that she plays, on top of not just the hardcores as well. And she just seems to have this power game that, look, when it comes together, is really a handful to deal with. And it's amazing because it's not just off the forehand, the backhand as well. It's just deadly at times. Serve was pretty good throughout the whole tournament, I thought, until really the final, where she had a couple of hiccups and obviously was serving in that second set. She was 5-1 down. I mean, I can't believe she blew that set. She would definitely be thinking about that, I'm sure, having some nightmares in the coming weeks. But I think she knew that she lost to someone who was playing some inspired tennis as well. But what do you think of her performance in the final, and also her tournament as a whole? I thought, obviously, a really good tournament, but is this kind of more to come from her? Is it, do you think could be a potential flash in the pan? She's made semi-finals before, but it's her first final.
Danielle is someone that I would never bet against. Let's put it that way. And I think now that she's cleared up some of her health issues, that she's probably feeling as good as she has in a while. Now, this is her favored surface at the Australian Open. This is what she likes. She's a flat ball power hitter and a street fighter who doesn't give up. And that's a pretty good combination. But she does not like the front court either. She's not wild about it. Her backhand is killer. So she's one of those rare players that I would actually hit to her forehand.
Yeah.
You can probably get more errors out of her forehand than you can her backhand. And Yeah, she's a great player, but the greatest thing about her is just that she doesn't give up on anything, and she's dogged. And um, there was some criticism of her come-ons, how she gets right into it and she's yelling, "Come on!" Um, and I don't know if you noticed, but she
Yeah.
wasn't doing that against Barty. She did not come out with that against Barty. I don't know if it was because
Yeah.
of the crowd. She didn't want the crowd turned against her in that way, or out of
Mm.
respect or whatever. But yeah, even Sloane Stevens, I was it no, it wasn't Sloane Stevens. Somebody played her. And oh no, it was Sloane Stevens and Raducanu. Sloane Stevens got mad at Raducanu for first point. Come on, that's what it was.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
First point. Come on. Yeah.
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 But no, I think some of the players have criticized Danielle
Yeah.
for just the aggressiveness and the vocal
Yeah.
aggressiveness.
I think it's because of the I've seen some clips. I think it's the come on after an unforced error from the opponent. I think is what gets on some of their nerves. And I've seen some clips. And the problem is you never know with clips, right? How it's gone, and it's all really short. But I've seen highlights. It was actually against Sakari where she was winning and there was no sound. And then as soon as Sakari was winning, she was grunting really loudly every shot. And you just think, okay, but maybe she's just trying really hard, but you just don't
Yeah,
know. And but
yeah.
then there's a bit of the dark arts, and she's not technically doing anything wrong until the umpire says something to her. So it's just like it's quite funny. I can see why people get decision, but the tennis she plays is really exciting to watch. The kind of other stuff, I mean, you can take it or leave it. It's kind of up to you. It's more of an opinion than anything else, I feel.
Yes, and to Danielle's point, sometimes things that seem like unforced errors, you in your heart know that you actually forced that in some way. So maybe she thought, maybe there were times when she thought, well, but I took time away there, or
Yeah,
I put her in a part of the court where she's not comfortable, so I forced that. Come on,
yeah.
I never have a problem with it, and just like Medvedev, we need colorful people and
Yeah.
we need people with personalities. So I love her. And especially as an American, I find myself rooting for her a lot.
No, I agree. I agree. I think if everyone was the same, it'd be boring, wouldn't it? So we need personalities for sure, and she's definitely one of them. I think she's got they call the Danimals, or kind of
Uh-huh.
her little
Yeah.
supporters, little group there, which is really cool actually. As well, I've seen her taking pictures with them, so that's amazing. She just doesn't have to do it, so it's really good that she does do it as well. I'm sure they appreciate it. In terms of like a couple of the like upsets, obviously Osaka losing to Anisimova. She's obviously really talented player, Anisimova as well. But Osaka looks like she's in a good place mentally. Were you surprised she lost? She had match points, and obviously though the fact that she hasn't played a lot of tennis after a very long time and didn't really play much last year. And what did you think of her level? Do you think it bodes well for the rest of the year? Do you think she'll have a chance at slams, or is this a bit of a kind of adapting year for her to just start to get to enjoy it again?
I thought the match against Anisimova was a great match. It was a high quality match. And as you said, she could have won the match. And so I definitely didn't see it as, oh my gosh, what happened to Osaka? That was just a competitive match that could have gone either way. I don't know where she's at mentally, because we're now going into that stretch on clay where this whole thing started when she was bothered about being asked about her record on clay. So I like to think, and I hope, and it seemed like she was in a really good place mentally. And I would love to see her go back to Roland Garros and have kind of a redemptive story there.
Yeah, it'd be great to see her have a good run there. Actually, it'd be quite cool to see. Um, yeah, I just want to ask a couple of questions actually, just about the kind of tournament as a whole, then, and some of like your favorite moments, etc. as well. We talked a little bit about Osaka and her upset. I mean, were you surprised about Zverev? I mean, there's a lot of kind of talk about him. If he wins, he goes to number one potentially, and then lost to Shapovalov, had a really abject match. He did say he hasn't played well throughout the whole tournament, etc. Though, but the back end of last year, he played so well, I thought. And then came into this, and I was thinking, I actually picked him, I think, which is a really bad pick in the end. But
No.
he No, not a bad pick.
No, he's a great player. I mean,
Yeah.
he's incredible. He just has not shown us yet in the slams, um, outside of the U.S. Open final that he made against Team. He hasn't really shown us that he can last in this best of 5 series that the Grand Slams are. But I picked him to go far, I'm pretty sure, and it's Shapovalov that I can't get a handle on.
Hmm.
That guy is just, you never know when he's going to turn in an incredible performance, and he doggone near beat Rafa.
Yeah.
So he's one that I'm a little bit more bullish on, but Zverev right now, the MO on him is he's going to win everything outside of the slams, and then he's going to be vulnerable in the slams. We'll see if that holds true.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? It just doesn't seem to quite be able to crack. It still hasn't beaten someone in the top 10 in the slam yet, so that would be interesting as well. Interesting stat. But you talk about Shapovalov, and the Canadians are not doing badly. Felix put in a really good display
Yep.
against, obviously, Medvedev. Yeah, it was Medvedev. Yeah, really, really good display, and obviously in a really good position against him as well. What do you think? I mean, this seemed like a real maturing throughout this tournament for him, and he played a couple of really good sets, I thought, against Medvedev. Started off the tournament really poorly, a lot of unforced errors, and then just came to his own, and he held his nerve against Medvedev for the most part. He could have won that match easily. It could
Oh
have
yeah,
swung either way.
he had a match point. I
He
mean,
did, yeah.
I thought he looked great in the final arguments of the match. I could tell his nerves got to him. I could just see, like, he's like a little boy. He's got that sweet boyish face. I could, and my son kind of reminds me of my son a little bit, and I could see the nerves, and the kind of the shell shock of letting it slip away. But he played a brilliant match, and I think he's still on the upside. So I expect great things from him. I think he will play in a Grand Slam final within the next 2 years.
Mm. A lot of people comparing his forehand to Federer as well. You talked about Barty, and what do you think about that?
Mhm.
I think his forehand looks very good at times, and it's looked really good in this whole tournament. I thought it looked so potent. He was just really confident hitting it, to be fair, in loads of different positions as well. And it was a nightmare, especially on this quicker surface.
It's easy power like Federer's. It's very little effort with a lot of pop on it. So I think sometimes he just has to rein it in. But you make a great point. Like, if I were him and his coaches, I would study how Federer uses the forehand in all positions of the court. Like, okay, it's a short ball. You're going to go forehand down the line and approach to your opponent's backhand if you're playing a righty. Okay, what kind of ball is Federer hitting right there? Like, is he going a little flatter in certain situations? Is he putting a little more loft in other situations? Like, really study the minute details and the footwork and the body positioning. And where does he go after he hits the forehand approach? Exactly where on the court does he station himself as he looks for a volley? I would really study his game, but it's just it's such easy power that I think reining it in will be the key for him. But again, I tremendous upside for him.
Yeah, I agree. And what about the American Maxim Cressy? Had a really good run.
Mm-hmm.
Serve volleyer that Medvedev was really irritated with in one of the sets that he lost, and you can see why. I mean, he just loves to come to the net, rushes the net. Of course, there's a quarter as well. Who had a kind of an okay tournament, but probably didn't go as far as he'd like. But beat Cam Norrie in the first round, which was a really good win. Francis Tiafoe, obviously Taylor Fritz was there. And then we'll ask about the women's in a second. There's so many American women in kind of who progressed far, but what's the feeling in America about on the men's side? Is how are these guys coming through? The younger ones coming through. Is there a bit of excitement around that?
I think for me personally, I'm seeing a change in Fritz. So I think there may be something with that. I'm not sure about Korda yet. I feel like I haven't seen enough of him. Tiafoe's one of my favorite players. He's more of like a threat to derail somebody right now than win a slam, but you know, you never know. Something could change. And who else did you mention there?
Maxim Cressy.
Oh yeah, love him. I mean, love him. Here's a guy who at some point said, "Okay, I'm just going to become a serve and volleyer, and I'm going to commit to that change." And I mean, you play, you know how hard it is to serve and volley. I mean, it's taxing on the body because you're constantly charging the net, but you also have to live with getting past a lot and believe that, okay, that was embarrassing, that stung. I made my opponent look good because he just hit an incredible passing shot on me, and but I'm just going to stick to my game plan, and I'm going to come right back in, and know that you're going to hit a lot of ugly volleys, and you're going to hit a lot of successful volleys that are deep, but you're looking toward the second and third volley to actually, you know, win the point or do damage. So it's a whole school of thought, and I love it. I absolutely love it. And this guy is a great addition to tennis.
No, I agree. Definitely needed. Really interesting to see as well. And it will improve not just himself, but he'll improve everyone that he plays against because then they'll be able to be more well equipped against volleys, you'd hope, after playing against him a few times. They'll know, okay, well, this is what we need to do against them. And also for him, I'm sure he'll just continue to improve and kind of hone his craft there. What about the women's side? There's so many women that did so well. Danielle Collins, obviously. Pagula again made a semi-final at the US Open. Madison Keys had a fantastic run in the end. She was unseeded, got through, did really well. Obviously, we mentioned Danielle Collins as well. And Anisimova as well, upset Osaka and then lost to Barty. Barty, I mean, to be fair, Barty ended up beating all the Americans. But what do you think of the American women? I mean, they're coming through, they're looking pretty strong. Is there something there?
I would like to see Anisimova work on her net game because she's got good height and good wingspan, and she's got a lot of other, you know, great serve, obviously. So I hope whoever's got a hold of her, coaching her right now, will, or maybe that she could see what Ash was doing, and take a page from that. Just like Danielle Collins said after the match, I would love to be able to implement some of your variety. I'd love to see Anisimova do that. And I watched that match very closely, and Anisimova Barty, and I noticed that Amanda was using like a forehand grip on some of her volleys. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
no,
Where's your proper
no.
grip? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and she's perfectly. She also hits some perfectly great volleys. You know,
Yeah.
perfectly technical, great volleys. But she's just not used to it.
Yeah.
She's just not used to it. She doesn't drill it. You know, that's not her style. And I mean, I look at her height and her physicality, and I'm just like, you gotta learn to come in. I mean, this is going to save your body, and it's going to feel really good to finish points this way. Pagula, you know, is great. She's but she's a baseliner too. So I get frustrated with the American style right now. I want everybody coming in like Cressy.
Yeah, exactly. Thing is, it's funny because some like Anisimova, Madison Keys, they're so big off like pretty much both wings, forehand and backhand. If they have that ability to change it up and have variation, as you said, come to the net, develop a good backhand slice and good approach shots, good volleying, then it just gives them, it makes them a 3D player. Whereas at the moment, they're very limited. And if that's not working, there is no different, there's nowhere else they can go, right? That's it, there's nowhere to hide as soon as someone nullifies those weapons. So 100% agree. yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how they go throughout the other tournaments as well. You'd imagine this is definitely a tournament that suited some of those, those types of styles. Um, in terms of like moments as well, so just a couple of questions on what your kind of experience of the tournament was. So, what was your kind of upset of the tournament? Do you think one that really surprised you?
I okay, upset of the tournament. Give me some choices.
So I think Osaka Smova is not really a particularly big one. I mean, Zverev Shapovalov could be up there. You could have, for example, on the women's side, Sabalenka losing to Kanepi. She wasn't playing particularly
Oh
well, but that was a
yeah.
big one. I mean, she was.
Every match, okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
got it. I got it. Every match that Kaya Kanepi played was my upset of the tournament. Yeah, this is someone who has been going deep in Grand Slams for many years and has made a wonderful living for herself on playing ITF events and winning. She's from Estonia, which is a small country, and she just hasn't had the financial support over the years. And people have talked about her injuries, but that's not really it. It's really more about the money. And that's why somebody like Ange Jabeur catching on and getting sponsorships is so important because
Yeah.
she's from a small country as well.
Yeah.
People don't realize, like, if you don't have the money, you can't go out on tour. You can't even, you're
Yeah.
done, you're cooked. So somehow Kaya Kanepi has made enough money on these lower tour events to and won these championships to be able to get herself into the slams, and she just keeps having deep runs. And I have a good friend who's a coach, and I don't know, 2-3 years ago, Kaya Kanepi followed him on Instagram, and he didn't follow her back. And I was like relentless, like, you got to follow Kaya Kanepi back. So I texted him, and I said it was on the eve of her last match, and I said follow her back, and he did.
Yeah, exactly.
So she deserves it.
Yeah, she does. She does. And also, actually, I forgot to mention, of course, Elise Cornet as well, beating Muguruza. That
Yeah,
was
that was a
huge.
good one.
And
That
she
was a
made the
good one.
quarters as well, which is her first quarter final. She's been on the tour for ages. I mean, 2007, I think. Every Grand Slam since 2007. First Grand Slam quarter final. Great story as well, to be fair.
Yeah, and
Uh,
what's interesting is that a lot of these women are older. They're in their 30s,
yeah.
and it's one thing for men to play into their 30s, and we think it's great, but we don't think as much of it as women. And Coco Gauff was out of the tournament. Raducanu was out of the tournament early. So don't give up on women in their 30s would be my mantra.
Yeah, for sure. It's probably quite an easy answer to this, but what was your most exciting match of the tournament?
Oh yeah, I mean it was an epic, the men's final. Nothing touches it. And with everything that went on with Djokovic going into the tournament, we needed this. We really did. And there were people who were thinking, what if Rafa wins the tournament after all this? And what if he moves ahead in the Grand Slam race? But then nobody really wanted to let themselves believe that it could happen. And it
Yeah,
did.
it's
It
true.
did. Yeah.
It's true. I didn't believe it at all. I was like, oh, it's not going to happen. It's like in the back of my mind, I was like, please happen. But I was like, it's never going to happen. I was like, don't let myself down. Don't get my hopes up and let myself down. But yeah, it was unbelievable, to be honest with you. And in terms of, I guess, a few others, so it's probably quite a hard one, but was there a funny moment that you found the Australian Open, something that was quite funny or a bizarre moment that happened during it?
I mean, I thought a lot of Medvedev's comments over the course of the tournament were humorous. When he played Cressy, he said it was boring. During the match with Nadal, it was he was trying to tell the chair umpire how to do his job, and it was like, if you have to say it 25 times, you have to say it. And then he said, they're idiots, calling the crowd idiots.
Yeah.
Probably not a lot of people picked up on that.
Yeah.
And then in the trophy ceremony, the Tennis Australia official goes up to make her long spiel, and he calls it boring again. I mean, so I guess
Oh my
those were my.
God.
I know,
Love it.
He'll learn. He'll learn.
To be fair, he can lean on the language barrier. To be fair as well. To be fair, I'm sure some of the things he says, he is probably not what he means,
Right?
But because of his vocabulary, that's probably what he ends up saying. But I found funny, so I don't know if you noticed, but he was telling the ball boys and ball girls how they should be working. I was like, this is hilarious. So in the middle of his service game, he's like, you should have 2 balls each. You should have 2 balls each. And I was like, I've never seen this before.
You definitely don't see that type of behavior out of the big 3. So I know he has to have his own style and everything. And what he wants is each of the ball boys to have at least 2 balls so that he can be fed the balls and he'll have choice and all that. He doesn't want one ball kid to have just one ball, because then he won't have enough choice.
Yeah.
It's too much. It's too much. That's trying to control things that you shouldn't be trying to control.
Yeah, very interesting. I've never seen that before. I was like, oh, okay, fair enough. This is a new thing. Yeah, that was very interesting. And well, to be fair, one of the funnier moments for me actually as well, which I only realised whilst watching, I thought that can't be the case, was Rafa dripping all over the court and then asking one of the ball boys to wipe it. And I was like, is he asking him to wipe it because something's got wet? Then I was like, oh no, that's his sweat, because when they show on the slow-mo replay, he's like sweating all over the court. I was like, what's going on? I was like, wow. I was like, this is ridiculous. He's just bouncing the ball and he's sweating everywhere. I was like, wow. I was like, okay, fair enough. He's creating a puddle everywhere. Poor Medvedev, they switch ends and he's playing and he's probably like, there's this big puddle of sweat there.
Yeah. And I've seen that. I'm sure as a player, you've seen it, right? Where you go, you change ends and you're like, what is that?
Exactly.
Don't want to slip or step in it even and carry it back into my car and everything.
Yeah, especially with the current climate. Yeah, exactly. You like, don't want any bug. I don't want anything, which is hilarious. And actually, in terms of, I wanted to get your predictions on. Obviously, it's early doors, and of course, it's not your ultimate predictions. But if you had to guess, you can be for men's and women's, or just men's as well, if you want. It's up to you. The winners for the next 3 Grand Slams the rest of the year.
Well, this is really hard because we don't know if Djokovic is going to play or not.
Let's say he does play.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's say, I guess, well, or if you want, we can be realistic and say, but then this gets complicated. He doesn't play the French, but he probably plays Wimbledon, because here in the UK, I'm pretty sure they're going to let him in. US Open, I don't know. You probably know better than me. I mean, again, it can change at any time.
I think he'll be let in. Definitely. I actually think the pandemic will be over, mostly. I mean, we'll probably be dealing with COVID or coronavirus for forever, but I think that it'll be more endemic and
agreed.
And a lot
let's
of
say
these,
he plays all of them.
I would envision another matchup between those two, Rafa and Novak, because who's playing better on clay right now than those two?
No Dominic Thiem. Well, if he is, he won't be fit anyway.
The latest is he's got problems with his knuckles. So, I don't see that.
Tsitsipas, but I mean, he had 2 sets to love up. I mean, can he play well enough on that to compete with those guys? And
there's a guy who surprised me. I mean, he'd had surgery, and I was not picking him to do well, and he did much better than I thought he'd do. Wimbledon, I expect that Roger will play. So
you do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. You heard it from me.
Okay.
Yeah, he's going to want to come back. especially after what Rafa just did. He's going to want to say his goodbye. And if he does, he's going to want to be ready and he's going to want to be fit. And remember, the last time we saw him, he made it all the way to the quarterfinals at Wimbledon, despite having not played very much. So just like I said going into this tournament, I never bet against Rafa. I also never bet against Roger.
But I feel like you've said who's going to be playing, but not who's going to win the tournament.
Oh, yeah. I try not to do predictions. Really, I do. I try not to do predictions. But who's going to win Wimbledon? I mean, it's a little early.
It is early. It was a disclaimer to say that obviously that can change at any point. But more of a fun gut feel. I
think Berrettini's going to win a slam soon.
Okay.
I really do. Yeah. And it may be Wimbledon. He does well on clay too. Here's another all-surface player. So I have a feeling Berrettini's going to break through soon.
I feel like you're struggling with a specific prediction, so I won't ask you again.
I don't do predictions because then, people get mad at me when I don't predict properly.
Don't worry, they won't get mad at you. They get mad at me if it's wrong. So it's fine. But no, that's fine. I understand. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing how
I'll tell you what. I'll predict that Rafa will win Roland Garros. How about that?
Okay.
Is that okay?
That makes me happy. So I hope that happens. Yeah. Rafa goes 2 ahead.
I'm really going out on a limb. Yeah. Nadal wins Roland Garros. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. You say that, but I tell you what, is Djokovic playing better than Nadal and clay at the moment? I don't know. He's just
Djokovic isn't playing at the moment.
That's true.
It's yeah, but he's gonna play Dubai, is it? Or well, he's gonna play somewhere in the Middle East coming up. So.
Yes, there is the Dubai Duty Free Championships 500, I think, isn't it? So yeah, I think he'll play in that, which would be interesting. I'm sure he'll love that. Nice weather and nice introduction back into the tour.
Yes,
I'm sure for him.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy, for being on. Really do appreciate it. Apologies, it's gone longer than expected. It always does.
Oh, all good. I really enjoyed it. Great discussion. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no problem at all. Welcome on any time. And do you want to shout out anything that I think I obviously called out at the start, but anything that you're featured on or anywhere people should check you out either on social media or platforms, etc.?
If you want to, you can follow me on Twitter. And I just started a new gig at this website, Tennis Connected. I do a weekly column there called Rational Numbers. So I'm enjoying that and give that a peek, I guess.
No, awesome. That sounds good. I'll put some of your social media links in the description to this video as well. And also, a link to the 3 tennis podcasts as well, so people can check it out on YouTube. So do check that out, guys. Yeah, really, really interesting podcast that Amy does with Gil and also Joel Drucker as well, which is always a good viewing. And of course, everyone's very familiar with Gil so far on this channel. He's been multiple times.
We love Gil. We love Gil. I do have to brag. I put that team together. First of all, the idea for this show was mine, even though it's not like a groundbreaking idea or anything. And then I found Gil. And Joel has been a friend of mine for a long time. And I love the fact that we're multi-generational and that kind of thing. So we'll have you on at some point because periodically one of us can't do it. So we get somebody to fill in. So we would love to have you as a guest.
Oh, I appreciate it. No, I'd love to be on. I would. It'd be amazing to be on. But the generational thing's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
Because then, of course, I hear now Joel's talking about different tennis players from a different generation. You're talking about players from a different generation. And Gil's talking about David Ferrer. I know that's his favorite player. I know that he'll mention it at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think I'm considerably taller than both of them. So.
Oh, really? Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, Gil. Well, that's probably why Gil's favorite player is David Ferrer, which is very understandable. Whereas mine's Nadal, and he's the same height as me. Well, I'm a bit taller than him actually, so that's okay. I could get away with that. But he's a lefty, so it's a bit a weird one. But yeah, thank you again. Really appreciate it, Amy. And as I said, guys, do check out Amy on all the social media as well. And hopefully, catch up soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a good